Hello, everyone. How's it going? Welcome to this fun live recording of Dragon Talk. I am Greg Tito, and we have, who are you this time?
My name is Shelly. Am I cut off?
Yes, you are. You're cut off. No one can see you.
Do you want me to sit
Still
more
in
like
frame.
this?
Can you actually, there's another room next to door here. Can you bring your mic, and then we'll just talk that
Can't
way.
believe you tweeted a photo with me cut out of it.
And then I had to delete it, and now I need to retweet it. With it
Okay.
also
Well, stand
still
by,
cut
everyone.
out.
He's not going to pick one in which I'm fully in the picture.
Nice. We are going to interview these fine folk.
Yes.
Mr. Wolfgang
Yes.
Baur and Anna B. Meyer from Kobold Press. We're working on Kobold Press right now. I'm going to do this tweet, though, so you guys talk amongst yourselves for a second.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Shelly.
Nice to have you here.
Oh, it's great to be here.
You know that Wolfgang is a friend of the show? Because we haven't had any guests on more than we've had you on.
I'm just a cheap date up the road. You're like, can you get away on your lunch hour? Yeah, sure.
You just give him a mug full of water,
Yep.
and he is
A mug full of water?
It's filtered.
Okay. Yep.
Filtered water. But sometimes you bring special guests,
I
like
do,
the lovely
like
Anna.
Anna, who is amazing.
Thank you.
So we're going to find out what Anna
I'm not even
was
gonna
working
say.
on.
Yes.
And it looks like you've got some show and tell.
I brought some things. We
I
can
like
show them at any time. Like we don't want to give it all away at the top of
No,
the show.
we got to
Yep.
keep people listening.
Yep.
I mean, but I'm kind of,
It's right there.
this is brand new, hot off the press.
Oh, yeah.
Is it on?
Really? Like right
It's like
off?
on
Is
the
it super
store
hot?
shelves now, but only has been about a couple of weeks. Yeah.
That book on the bottom, that looks like a, I know
the
which
killer
one that
book.
is.
You know what it is, don't you?
The one we've talked about.
Yeah,
this.
we have. We talked about it ages ago, and now it's a real thing.
That is
Yes.
amazing.
I know.
The size of that book.
Mm-hmm.
I think it could be bigger.
That'll be a volume 2 coming in.
Greg can't please him, Tito.
That's true. I like
the gamer
Yeah.
psyche right there. Wow,
Yep.
this is awesome and
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
Could you make it bigger?
Could you get more? Could you just
I
make
think it could
more,
be bigger.
please?
We'll get
Nice.
more, please?
Worked so hard for 4 years to get that one, and
Yeah.
then you say, "Oh, what's the next one coming out?"
Worked
Yep.
5 years
Yeah, I
and
could've
made
done
it
more.
bigger.
I was a game journalist, so I guess that's kind of what
So
I'm supposed to do.
that would be your
Yep.
review.
Yeah. That's
Could've
all
been
right.
bigger.
You know,
I like it, but
Yep.
put 1 star.
100 more pages.
straight to the
Wow.
1 star.
Cut you deep.
You know, I'm bringing a rider next time. I want the green M&Ms.
Yep.
I want the champagne on ice.
That is
Oh, we
no
can do
way
that.
to treat our
We can
friend
do
of
some
the show.
green M&Ms. That'll be fine. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
We could do it.
whatever you want.
I am excited to do this actual real interview. You want to do it? Should we do it for reals now this time?
We were doing it.
Dang it!
But
Was it already starting?
It's already started. You're
it's not real until Greg's doing it too.
It's the wall. That's also not true. None of these things are real and or true. I was actually just checking to see if we were live yet. Do you think that's true? Are we actually live?
What?
We try-
Oh, yeah, they're giving the high sign.
Okay.
All right, good. Yeah, everyone's blaming me as they should. Okay.
Blame Tito.
This makes sense
I like
now.
your pink ampersand, Tito.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can get this shirt at the Think Geeks. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Very thinky.
Pink and purple.
It's got kind of an OP, like Ocean Pacific OP
Yeah.
vibe to it.
It does, right?
Brings me right back to the 80s.
Hang 10.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like it.
Exactly. Hey, that's us. We're looking, and I'm just doing the thing that I was just doing. All right.
See?
We are live and ready to go. All right. So should we do our real intro now? Are we ready to start recording? All right.
All right, for real.
Thank you guys for bearing with us on the chats. You are good people, and
The best people.
now we're gonna do it. We're for not for fakes anymore. This is all for reals. Okay. Everyone's said on themselves.
Now it's real. Yep.
This is the
Said-
part that can be edited.
That's
So-
right. Now after this, it can't be. It's live. Welcome to Dragon Talk, everybody. How's it going? I am Greg Tito, and I am joined by Shelly Mazzanoble. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good. You're my
Good.
favorite person not to cut off in a picture.
You are my favorite person to cut me off in a picture.
Aw, that's pretty high up on the list. I'm
That
glad.
really is.
Yeah.
I don't,
Not
you're
many
like
people who do that.
In like the top 5.
Nice.
Yeah.
And we have these two fine folks with us today. Mr. Wolfgang Baur, friend of the
Yeah.
show.
Oh, yeah. Many a visit here.
Yeah.
Glad to be back.
Yep.
Excited. This is like number 4, I think,
I
I
right?
think it's number 4.
And people have even like requested that you just show up more often, and
What?
maybe you're just like,
I don't know if I can work that into my schedule, but it's very flattering. Thank you.
Well, it is very flattering.
Yes.
The people love you.
Oh, hooray.
And Anna B. Meyer is here.
Yep.
How are you?
Good. Yep.
Glad
Great to
you're
be
here.
Thank you.
So we know what Wolfgang does. People know him as the Kobold in Chief. What's your position? What do you do?
I do maps. Yep. I love so
maps.
I'm kind of a fantasy cartographer. So I worked for Wolfgang now for almost 5 years now.
4,
Yeah, we
5,
started
yeah.
Southlands about 5 years ago.
Right,
Yeah.
and it didn't see print till 2015.
Exactly,
But
yep,
there was
yeah.
a lot of work to
Yep.
get there.
And
gotta
I've
be
done
very
some,
patient.
a lot of other stuff too, but that's been my main gig the past 5 years. Yeah.
Is maps.
That
Yeah.
is
How
awesome.
did you two find each other?
Well,
Online.
Greyhawk, the power of Greyhawk.
Yep.
Oh,
Yes. And I did a Greyhawk map that was so impressive, and it was posted online. I'm like, who is this cartographer? And I dug around a little. It wasn't that hard to figure out, oh, this is Anna. She does this cool cartography of one of my favorite D&D settings. I wonder if she has any time available to just do a little thing for Cobalt Press. Just a little corner over here, a little regional map, nothing big. And that rapidly spun out of control.
Yes, exactly. It took a little while, and then we did a whole continent.
How
A
big
whole
a continent?
continent?
Yes.
Yeah. It's
Oh
like half
my
a million, or
God.
probably about 2 million square miles.
2
something
million
like that.
square miles of
Yeah,
continent.
something like that. Yeah.
Wow, that's a lot of
We
square
started
miles.
with that. So we started with something the size of Africa, and then we moved on from there.
Oh my God, that's crazy.
how did it keep growing?
Well, Wolfgang's fantasy
Were you
kind of
just like,
imagination
oh,
is kind of
It's my
Undiscovered
Yeah.
territory.
It's my
over here.
fault. I did that.
I wanted there to be an outer coast that could be
Yeah.
civilized and interesting
Yep.
and all that, and then an interior that would have just room for everything, like dinosaur kingdoms.
But we shrunk it down. It was double sized to begin with.
You
And
talked me down out
yeah.
of the
Yeah.
whatever it was.
It was like
12
an 8,000
million.
mile desert, and I said that's kind of a little bit too much. So we kind of we shrunk it down a little bit.
It's gonna be mostly blank.
More manageable.
Yeah.
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 But it really makes everyone appreciate those teleport spells, right? That
Yep.
they don't get in
That's
Midgard.
needed.
And
Yep.
so,
Yep.
yeah, it,
Someone figured out it took like 3 months to go from that city to that city in the desert, and we don't only need to
No.
take it month and a half. That was all that's needed. So yeah.
Oh, right. Well, that's easy. Yeah.
Yep.
You cut it down by half. That's
Yep.
good.
So what is this continent?
so that continent is the Southlands, which
Okay.
is part of the Midgard setting.
Okay.
So that continent was the first one Anna did.
Mm-hmm.
More recently, she's done the main continent of Midgard, which is.
Oh my God, time for the show and
Yeah,
tell.
time for the. You knew it was coming, right?
Yep.
There was the Midgard world.
Yep.
And in the back is where the best part is the fold out map,
I love that.
right?
Oh,
So we can fold out one of these maps.
can we take it out of us?
We actually brought one that isn't even folded.
Oh my God.
'cause you're so special.
This is like a cooking show when
It is
they're
like a
like,
cooking
okay,
show.
then you
Oh,
put it in the
wow.
oven for 15 minutes,
Right.
and then
And then it comes out like this.
like this awesome.
My
map.
daughter had this pink twist tied
was
when
just
I was
admiring
looking
that.
for a rubber band this morning.
That's the
and
perfect application for a twist tie.
It really is. Oh,
What?
My
What?
God.
No,
Yep.
no.
So this is the
So for you guys listening on podcast form, you're just going to hear lots of oohs and ahs
And
and
paper.
drools
Yep. Paper
and
rustles.
dripping of saliva onto
Holy
paper.
cow!
That's the main Midgard
Are
continent,
you kidding me?
which is also available online at midgardmap.cobaltpress.com, something like that.
Look at Anna, your
Awesome.
name's all nice and big right
It
there.
should be.
Yep.
She did all
Really?
this work.
I made
I-
sure that it was on
How
there.
on
Yep.
earth? I don't even know.
Well, we should
How you
talk about
begin?
how, because
Yeah.
like the technique is amazing, right? It's all.
Yeah.
Yeah, I use the same digital tools that they use for create terrain for Hollywood movies and computer games and stuff like that, and apply it for fantasy tabletop roleplay.
So I think I have to just go back even a little bit further. But how did you even get into this?
I had it as a hobby. I've been playing D&D since 1979, so I've been playing every edition and just had fun with it. And as every gamer, I wanted to be game designer. I wanted to do monsters. I wanted to write adventures and whatnot. I realized that there's a lot of people that are much better than me at this. And so I realized, what's my thing? Well, I love landscape photography.
Yeah.
I've been flying a lot in my life, so I love to look at terrain and the world and
Oh,
so on.
that's
So,
cool.
so doing maps became my speciality. And in the beginning, I was doing pencil and whatnot, like doodle like everybody else. But then digital mapping came about in the 90s, and I thought these are really cool tools. So I started using them and did it as a hobby, and started mapping Greyhawk because that was the game world that I ran my games in. So I started mapping that for about 15 years, and then I moved to California. I realized now I need something new to do. So I sat down and finished my Greyhawk map and was Annie nominated for it. And then Wolfgang kind of reached out and a bunch of others, and now I'm doing it full time. So
Oh my God, this is now it's full time.
Yeah.
Wait, so how did you get Emmy nominated for a Greyhawk map?
Well, it was simply someone sent in the digital image, and you have free content and blogs and whatnot.
Annie.
So
Annie. Did you say Emmy?
Annie.
Any.
I was
Yes.
like, how did
Annie.
a map of Greyhawk
Yeah,
end
it's
up on
any.
TV
Yeah,
no,
without
any.
us knowing about it?
Yeah, Ian
It's an
was.
award in the
Yeah.
tabletop industry. You may have
Yeah.
heard.
I may have heard
Yes,
of that one.
yeah,
yes.
you won like 500 of them.
We
or
were just
something.
happy to be nominated.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
technically,
Among-
we were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have a few examples.
That's
of-
true. That's
Oh yeah,
a
bring out the
of that
Greyhawk map.
Yeah, so these are a
So
few
is
kind
this
of
the map
examples.
that
That's
started everything?
That's started everything for me. Yeah, so I just keep doing. And this is
That's-
just a small bit of it. It's about 5 feet by 5 feet.
And what year was that made?
I started making this in 1997.
Okay.
98, sorry. And then I kept doing it for 20 years. So now it's 20 years old. It took about 15 years, spread out over 15 years, about 5 years of full-time work doing it.
Wow.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
That's insane.
Yep.
Awesome work. I love maps so much. I think there was always like my portal into fantasy has been studying maps. It started with Tolkien back in the day, and getting
Tolkien's
all
maps
that.
are great too, right? They're
Yeah.
reproduced in the books.
Yep.
The author did them, which kind of gives them
Gives it an
another-
extra.
Yeah.
And these are just things that take you. They make it feel real, right?
Yeah, I wanted to visualize. For me, there's a place for that kind of Tolkien-esque map that looks like a parchment paper that you bring up. That's something that in my campaign, the characters will buy that, and when they go to a big city and go to a cartographer in-game, they will buy that map. The maps I'm doing here are more the maps that the DM and you need in order to visualize the world. So to know where should I have the orc encounter, or where should that castle on the mountain hilltop be, and where on the coastline should be a great place to have a harbor and a city or whatever. So so it's a way of visualizing the world, because when it's in the theater of the mind, you need certain tools in order to visualize it.
And these almost feel like the satellite
Yes.
imagery of what it
All
actually
those
looks like.
years of being a pilot paid
Yep.
off,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
All that boring flying around the world.
Looking at the world.
I love that.
Yeah,
like,
and
because of
hiking
your
and landscape
experience
photography and
with
stuff,
flying.
and gaming. So I want to, I
So
want to
cool.
visualize the gaming world, so to speak. Just like you do the same thing that you've had in dungeon maps for decades. You've had beautiful dungeons being rendered so you can have that combat in dungeons. I want to do the same thing for overland ventures. I want to have the dungeon map for overland gaming.
Yeah.
Honestly, the zoom feature on the Midgard online map is my favorite
Oh
bit.
my God.
Because you can go from this big continental scale and you
Yes.
click down and
Yeah.
you click down and you click. I think you can do 4 clicks now.
Yeah.
Closer, tighter, tighter,
zoom
tighter.
in.
Yep.
And at some point, you're just like, when does it stop clicking, right?
Yep.
How
It
close
never
can I
stops.
get?
It never stops.
And you're always talking about, like, well, how big is a pixel? I'm like,
Yeah.
well, a pixel is tiny. And
Yeah.
you're like, no, I mean, is a pixel 100 feet wide
Yep.
or a mile wide?
Yep.
And
Oh,
your
yeah.
maps are
Yep.
like, it's measured in feet. Like, each
I
pixel
did
is...
a small for my patron last month. I finished a project. That each pixel was 10 feet, meaning you can see individual houses, you can see trails and trees and stuff like that. This is a 1/4 of a mile pixels, so you can't see details that small. But on Midgard, it's about the same as this in detail level. But we've talked about special areas in Midgard that are of special interest for the players to do them at 100 feet or 10 feet per pixel. So you can show what
love
special cities look like, and you can have the surrounding areas, so you know where the secret temples are, or
Right.
the stuff like that. Yeah.
So when you design it, is it all like just different layers of, or?
It's a 3D world. It's actually modeled in 3D.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so you can look at it from top down. You can look at it from other angles and stuff like. You can zoom in and stuff, and it's also various data layers. So you can I can actually switch out the pixel layers of the image and replace it with parchment and just put the shading on there for like political maps. So you want to know where elves live, or where a certain evil cult, what's their area of influence and things like that. And you can switch out all sorts of stuff that way. You can put trade, how rich are the people living in these areas, what's the general alignment of an area if you have that in your campaign, all sorts of things.
I mean, you call it a map, but it's really more like an atlas, right?
Yes,
Because
yeah.
it contains all the this additional
Yep.
information.
Yep.
And they call it a map.
Yes. Yeah. Mhm.
It's just loaded with
Yeah.
political information, geography.
And so when you're running your own campaign, do you give that material to your players? Do you give them
To
that
a
level of
degree,
detail?
Yes. Yeah, to a degree I do. I give them, what I do usually is I put the map in Illustrator or Photoshop, and then I blur out the large area. So if they're in an area, they can see that there is a mountain chain over here, the coastline is there, and then I have pins on the map showing like there's a city over there, but they don't know what the land actually looks like. And I have a lot of hex scrolls. They wander across the landscape. And a journey in my campaign is like a journey in role-playing game is more like how many encounters, what's happened over the journey. So if you go across the city, you might have 10 things happening. But if you need to go across the kingdom, you need to have 100 things happen. Otherwise, it doesn't feel like you've gone anywhere.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's why you have to have tons of things happening. And also it needs to be consistent. So if they had that wonderful little campsite by the river that looked beautiful 3 years ago, when they come back, it should be remembered, and I should be able to tell the gamers again what it felt like and what it looked like. And that consistency, meaning it's a world they can actually adventure in that is there for them, so to speak.
I love that because
Yeah.
that's the way so I want to play in your campaign. It's basically
Me
what
too.
it comes
I
down
know.
to.
Yeah.
Because I love that level of simulationist detail where
Yep.
it's like, it's
Yep.
not just, there's some DMs who do completely theater of the mind style. And
Yep.
it's like, just one thing to the next.
Yep.
And there's no
Yep.
consistency like that. But having that information of like, you've been there before, or like that this is
Yep.
now controlled by these people, and then having the players be able to influence that and like,
Yep.
if you do this dungeon or if you
Yep.
overthrow this lord or something like that, then the political map changes. And then that makes it feel
Yep.
so much more real
Yep.
to me, because as I said, maps are like my gateway into
Yeah.
this type of fantasy.
Yeah.
So
And some games are they want to run an adventure path, or they just want to have a one shot or something. But some campaigns and some gamers, they kind of like to have a sandbox where they can live in, so to speak, and adventure in
Yeah.
for years and years and years,
Slowly
advance
take over.
Yeah,
Take over the entire planet.
Yeah. So I think it's a different taste of how you want to play. And sometimes I just want to run something just for test out new technique or make an encounter. But sometimes I want to have to come home, so to speak, to adventure where we've done for years.
yeah.
Yep.
So we're totally ignoring you,
I
because
know. I'm
we're so
sorry.
fascinated with this.
Thank you for bringing Anna.
You're so welcome. I'm happy to share her. She is
She's
wonderful.
amazing.
Yeah, because so you mentioned you started playing in '79. Can
Yeah.
you talk a little bit about that? I mean, you were in Sweden at
Yes,
the time.
I was in Sweden at the time, and it was a friend of a friend who had been in America and picked up a Xerox copy of the game and had one set of dice. And I still don't to this day don't know who that person is, but someone was here
Somebody somewhere.
and introduced me, and then they needed more players for the game, so they simply dragged me down and set me at a table, say, "You're going to play D&D." I hadn't even read. I didn't know what fantasy was. I'd never read Lord of the Rings,
Oh,
or
wow.
I didn't know what dwarves or
Wow,
elves
you
or
totally
halflings.
came in cold.
Exactly, I was completely cold, and we played it one afternoon. And I was kind of, what is this weird thing? And I didn't know about it. But they said, we're going to play tomorrow again. And I was like, okay, we'll do it tomorrow again. And then it struck me how the potential possibilities of this was. And 3 hours into that game was like, this is really cool. And
3
then
hours
I
into
picked up the Bilbo and started reading Lord of the Rings, and then I was hooked.
Yeah.
And the first DM we have, he didn't do much of a good job, but he disappeared quickly. And then we had a new guy, and he was
disposed of him.
amazing. And he was simply, the way he ran adventures was just awesome. And I wondered, what is all this wonderful game about? And then I picked up, a few years later, I picked up the Greyhawk box back in '83. And that's when I realized, this is my magic. So it became my little box of stories and stuff. And I ran my games in it and done it ever since. But I love to play in all sorts of other stuff. So I played in Forgotten Realms and Dark Sun and all other games too, but mainly D&D and fantasy. Yeah.
That is fantastic. It's so funny that someone just picked up a copy, here in
Yeah,
the States,
brought
brought
it
it over,
over,
and then it
Yeah.
expanded from
Infiltrated.
there.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's how it happens.
That is how it happens.
Yep.
Yeah, well, at least back then, where
Oh, yeah,
there was the
we-
culture of like bootleg cassettes and things like that.
And
they
we
were just-
found out that there were a couple of other game groups in the country, and we started organizing conventions. And then I became part owner of a game store for
Oh my
like a
gosh,
decade, and part of organizing conventions. And yeah, it was one of my main hobbies for like 25, 30 years. Yeah.
Where in Sweden?
That was in near Gothenburg in the western part of Sweden. So
Okay.
yeah, so GothCon is actually one of the oldest game conventions outside America. I think
I
it's
get
been
a
there.
It's still
totally
going?
different image
Yeah.
in my mind when you say GothCon.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's not what
exactly.
I thought.
Yeah, it's because of Gothenburg. It's
Right.
Gothenburg. Yeah,
No, it makes
GothCon. So,
sense.
so it was. I think they organized it from 1977 or something like that. And
It's
I was
still
part
going?
Of, oh yes, they're still going on. They've gone on
And
every
this
year
is one
since.
that you started?
I didn't start it, but I was part of organizing it one of the first couple of years. So, yeah,
Wow.
yeah. When we started doing D&D and Traveler and a few other games back then. Yeah.
Do you now? I mean, I'm fascinated now to think about what playing in other countries and different cultures is all about. Have you been back to Sweden? Like, what's the Dungeons and Dragons or role playing community like there?
It's almost as developed as here, I would say, because it's probably has about the same penetration as here. And there is also, of course, the big games from here, like D&D and others, are as popular there as here. But there also are some Swedish games, and some of them have actually been crossbred over here. Like Cult is one of the
Right.
examples.
I've played that.
Yes,
That's a
exactly.
Swedish
That's
game?
originally a
You
Swedish
can
game.
tell
Yeah.
because it's super dark.
But
Yeah,
that's not
yeah.
what
And
I
gothy.
pictured
Yep,
from
exactly.
Sweden.
Yep. And there was yeah.
wow.
So
It's
there's
not
a
all
bunch of
ABBA.
Happiest people
Yep.
ever.
Yep. So role-playing games became quite an established hobby, and it's been going up and down just like here. It was big in the 80s, early 80s, and then it was kind of down during the 90s, and then have a big revival again, just like here. So
That's
yeah.
cool.
So did it ever have the like when here D&D was kind of tied to
No,
some,
we are so secular, so that was
Okay, you
never an
never had
issue.
any of
No,
the-
no, we don't have that hang-ups like that. No, I'd never heard of that. And yeah.
That's
And-
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I knew a lot of friends in Stockholm in the video game side of things.
Yeah.
You know, people at Paradox
Yeah.
and all that. And and they
Yeah.
were always spoke fondly
Yeah.
of playing Dungeons and Dragons. And
I think that's one of the reasons that Sweden is big in video games too.
yeah.
Yeah,
Because
it's probably a
because of the-
crossover.
of D&D
You
being
had,
big there?
Yeah, you had
Oh,
that
yeah.
that culture. It's a crossbreed between meaning creative people that work with stories and stuff like that. So yeah.
That's fascinating.
So are you still playing D&D?
Oh yes, yeah, that's part of it. I play other games too, but I still play D&D. Yep. I haven't started playing 5th edition that much yet, but I'm getting into it. So yeah.
We're working on her.
Yeah. So I've stayed with 3.5. Have been my mainstay for a long time. So, but but I think that 5th edition is the best edition that is there, and what is there is simply awesome. It's just that there are things not there yet. So that's what I'm waiting for.
There was a lot
more.
there
Yeah.
in 3.5.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, you could make any kind of weird thing that
Yeah,
you could possibly
exactly.
think of with
That's-
prestige classes and
Yep,
whatnot. Yeah.
Yep. So I'm waiting for some of that content to come out and house ruled it. And 5th edition is it plays
I
the
have
best
an
of
idea.
ever.
I know a small press publisher who's willing to
Yes.
provide that content.
I worked so hard doing that. So yep.
It's
Breaking news.
it's Green Ronin, isn't it?
You cut me to the quick.
We'll have to get Chris on and we'll
Yeah.
talk about it.
Yep.
Well, he'd do it.
By the end of this podcast, Wolfgang's going to have the Kickstarter live.
I know.
Exactly.
Hey, man,
Yep.
I'm just going to hold up. You know, there's this Hero's Handbook, Anna. It's like a
Yes.
player's handbook for 5th edition with all these character
Mm-hmm.
options and 300 spells and 12 new domains. I
Lots
don't
of
know.
good stuff in there.
It's
Yeah.
a
Can I take look?
ridiculous. Yeah, you really should.
Yeah.
So this
I brought-
is this the brand new one?
This is brand new. These two came out at the same
They came out
time.
at the same
Yep.
time.
So one's a world book and one is a crunch book, which is sort of it's all the new races like the bear folk
Tiny
and
font.
the trollkin, and it's
There's a lot in this.
There's
book.
a lot in this. Well, if we're going to call it a hero's handbook, it has to deliver all those options, right?
Yeah.
So we said, let's do elven magic and shadow magic. Let's do a subclass for every single possible character class except the monk, because we don't like them.
Why don't you like the
Okay.
monk?
No, I actually don't mind the monk. I don't know how we skipped it. I think we just sort of said the monk seems to be doing fine without us. Maybe it doesn't. We didn't have anything that was cool enough. Or Unearthed Arcana beat us to it, right?
That's
Like,
blame
that-
Jeremy whenever you get a chance.
Well, I don't know. Credit Jeremy.
Credit Jeremy.
for being so far ahead on the monk that there was nothing we could add.
Man, I want more centaurs in my life.
I
You-
can smell that new book from over
It
here.
does. It's got a
that
nice
new
new
book.
book smell.
It does.
Yeah.
Yes. So I just we have been getting a ton of feedback on this. Like, when's it coming to D&D Beyond? And I'm like, oh, I have bad news on the licensing front, people. But
Yeah. When you have to explain business relationships, it always ends up in an unhappy result for customers.
right, but it's like this is going straight to Fantasy Grounds and Roll20, and it's at your local game store, right? Like, the Canadians are, can I pick it up locally? Well, yes, you can.
Over the interwebs, as well as through the book channels.
Yeah, so it just hit. People are kind of grooving on it and launching new campaigns. I think there's already a couple of streamers and podcasters who are saying, well, we've got a world book and we got a player's handbook. Why don't we run this thing? And I'm like, oh, thank goodness, because I thought I had missed the streaming Twitch.
But now you can jump right back in.
Well, other people are picking up the torch. I don't have to jump in, right?
That's right.
It's even better if someone else is.
God, I keep opening up to the bear folk. I mean, I think they're pretty much.
I think they're speaking to you.
Yeah. And it's got like an alas poor Yorick. I knew him well.
That is totally his pose.
Was that the art description that you wrote?
I think that went to the art director. It's like, he's a bear, and he's saying alas poor Yorick. All right. I gotta
with the horn skull.
With the horn skull. I got to show the one other picture, which I think I showed this at GaryCon a lot. This is my favorite new cleric because we have all these new domains. That's her. She's a dwarf. We took a position on the no beard for dwarves. She is a cleric of the beer goddess.
Oh, yeah, that one speaks to me.
Yes, I know. There's a beer domain in here. You can become a cleric of the beer domain.
I live in the beer domain.
I'm going to role play the hell out of that.
We need to map all the corners of the beer domain.
And there's a little sidebar for you elfie, wealthy types who don't want to play a dwarf, right? Then you can call it the wine domain.
Yeah.
Do this.
Actually, that sounds more up my alley.
See, now I understand your two personalities.
Right.
You're the beer person.
I'm
you're
the beer
wine.
goddess.
Well, no, I think you're the wine person.
Well, I'm kind of everything. Beer, wine, bubbles.
Margarita
equal.
vodka.
Here you come.
I don't
Yeah,
care.
exactly. The vodka.
Clementine vodka.
Tito's is where it's at, really. That's the only kind of vodka anyone should have.
It's the Svedka.
Oh my goodness,
Svedka.
there is a Tito's vodka, isn't there?
that's true.
And you get a percentage.
Every time I mention it on this podcast.
The family vodka business.
So when all of you are saying blame Tito, I'm getting those sweet vodka bucks.
His name's not even Greg Tito.
I changed it
Sponsorship.
after the
It's sponsored.
Got that tattooed on a shoulder blade.
which is silly now because it's the guy's first name is the guy who made the vodka. It's Tito Beveridge is his name.
Wait.
His real name is Tito Beveridge.
That is not true.
It is.
His last name is Beveridge.
His last name is Beveridge, and he makes
And he
beverages.
makes beverages.
You're totally making this up.
No,
Why
it's
didn't he just
true.
call
Look at
it-
the bottle. It says it's by Tito
I think
Beveridge.
he made it up.
Yeah, Tito Beveridge
But
made it
Tito
up.
Beveridge
Yes.
is maybe the company?
No, it's him. It's the
Yeah.
guy. I'm serious.
Somebody Google this.
Yeah.
It's true.
What?
I worked on a Tito's vodka commercial.
See?
Oh my
See?
goodness.
Really?
Ryan backing me up.
Yep.
Wow.
You know, if it comes from the engineering booth, it's
Yep.
official.
It's official.
Yep.
Exactly.
Wow.
All right.
All right.
So what are you going to be mapping next? What's the next map
Well,
project?
we have something
Yeah.
up
We've-
the sleeve in the future.
We
A
have
bunch of
talked about another large Midgard map, which we haven't quite announced yet,
Yeah.
and zooming in on the city of Zobek. We
Yes.
talked about that because that's the water deep of Midgard, and doing this sort of 1 pixel equals 10 feet thing is
Yeah.
really appealing to me.
That's what I would like.
That's
do you-
super cool.
Yeah.
Like you could zoom in to like see buildings.
You can put trees in there and stuff like that too. So yeah.
So like when you're in the marketplace, could you
Yeah.
actually like look around and
Well,
see the different
yeah, you want to
stalls?
bridge from the battle map to
You
the
can take
world
that.
map, so to speak.
Right.
You want
That
to
you
have
can use
some
that.
some sort of connection. It's hard to do that for every area, but you
Right.
can do it for some area. Instead of just having the city, you can put the city in its terrain, like the surrounding 50 miles or so.
Oh, man,
So
that'd be so great if it
cool.
was like
Yep.
like the Google Street View.
Yep.
Like level
That's what
of
I was
just-
picturing.
Yeah.
Iconic
Street view.
places in campaign settings should be detailed, not only the dungeon, but also the surrounding area,
Yeah.
so you can get the feel for what it looks like.
Right.
Yep.
So what would you? So all right. First off, what's you said you use a piece of software that does this.
I use half a dozen pieces of software, but I use World Machine, I use Gaia, I use Vue, I use Photoshop, Illustrator. Yeah.
How do you combine them all into one product?
You have to kind of mix and match. You use textures in some of them, you use vector graphics, and you work on the height data, and then you use some geographical information systems to present it, and then stuff like that. And then it's some painting and some touching up and traditional kind of things too. So
So when you export it out, does it come as a flattened image, or
Yes,
and then
yeah.
you can
Or you
as
can-
you're
you
talking
can-
about
you-
more of a web application where you can
Yes.
zoom in.
Yep. Eventually, you can put it in a game engine too,
Right.
and,
I mean,
and look
it's-
at it from any angle and stuff
Yeah.
too.
It's
Sort
So.
of both, right? Like the map you export is a
Yep.
layered thing.
Yep.
So that's great both for printing it and looking great, but also when we put it online, right?
Yep.
That Midgard map.
Yep.
you can remove layers, I think.
Yeah, and also there's also elevation data. So you have basically the same data that you can get from Google Earth or something, and so you can actually put it in a geographical information system and look at it from any angles, get elevation curves and stuff like that. It's a possibility. Yeah.
It's possible to put a pin here and a
Yep.
pin there and say, how
Yep.
far is it between these pins?
Yep.
Right, including elevation and all that.
Yeah. So there's you can do a lot of these things. It's more what you want to do and taking the time to do it. But
Well, right. So that was my part B of this question was how would you get a beginner in on this? What's the
I have
baby's
a
first?
patron that one of the purposes is it to get more people than me working on this.
Okay.
Yeah, so they can pledge and support it, and I can give them the secret, so to speak, and I give them the source.
That Patreon? Is that under your name? Or
Yeah,
is
it's
that-
patreon.com/Anna B. Meyer.
He's good.
Yeah.
He's good.
Yeah.
I wasn't entirely sure if it was under Greyhawk Maps,
You
and I'm like, I think
supporting
that's a
it, so
copyright
you
violation.
found it somewhere. So yeah,
I did find it. All right.
Yep. Yep. So one of my coming project is to renew that one, to redo it again.
Oh, to redo the
Yes,
the
redo
Do
this.
it again? Didn't
Yeah.
you say it took you like 25 years?
Yeah, so it took. Yeah, I worked on it for
Retirement
20
plan.
years, and it took about 5 years to full-time work. And I expect this time to take about 5 years more as a hobby project to redo it, just to figure out how to do it the best and use it as my research and development setting. Because if I do things commercially, I don't want to have to invent the wheel and tell Wolfgang that it took 3 extra months and took me this long and it doesn't look good. So I have something to play with.
Oh, okay.
But I'm
Yeah.
also hoping that you will open DM's Guild or something, so I can present it there to,
That
to
would
the
be
players.
That would be
cool,
amazing.
Yes,
right?
yeah, that will
Yeah.
be my. So I can kind of keep it in the back pocket. And,
Yes.
yeah.
Why can't
Yeah.
we?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Well, I mean, you're looking like it's up to me, but sure.
Yeah, we'll see.
But I
Yeah.
mean, you can start with Barovia is in there as
Yeah.
well as
Yeah.
all
I
of
love it.
the
And there's-
Forgotten Realms,
yeah.
Faerun, even
And
just the Sword
I was
Coast.
just going to say there is also other settings to work on. So yeah, we'll
It's
see.
true.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
But I mean, Ravenloft and the Sword Coast are certainly places that were great to start. And the nice thing about Ravenloft is it's relatively small.
Yep.
It's
Yeah.
not an Africa-sized
Exactly.
continent.
Yep.
You probably knocked that off in a weekend, right?
It's
Yeah.
like
Oh,
a,
yeah.
it's like a New
Yep.
England size.
Yep.
You know,
We do that.
Easier to bite
afternoon.
off.
Yep.
Right.
In an afternoon. Oh my God.
The one thing that Anna didn't say, but that I think is incredibly fascinating about that altitude data,
Yeah.
if you have hills and mountains and everything embedded in your map, one of the things, I don't know how you do this, but you can move a camera through it.
Yep.
So it's like a flyover.
What?
Yeah, well, the Midgard Kickstarter video did this, right?
Yeah.
Like, and then the launch video, actually, which is live now, also does it, where we fly over the setting and you follow the river and you're up over the mountains and through the hills. And you said it was easy once the map existed to
Yep.
do the flyover, and I'm like, but the flyover's animated and I'm flying through space like a dragon.
Yep.
And
Well, that part it only takes a lot of number crunching. So you put a computer and you put the settings and you leave it for 4 days, and then you come back and pick it up again.
Oh, and it's,
So,
it's
yeah.
all got all the frames ready
Yep.
to go
Mhm.
for you.
so
Yep.
it's easy for you, but
Yeah.
some
It
poor
takes time.
Power Mac or
Yeah, exactly.
something
Have to be
is
fried
sweating.
for a week or something. Yep. Mhm.
Please, Anna,
Yep.
don't hurt us.
Yep. Yeah, smokes come out, and I hope that my electricity provider will not cut the power while I'm doing it. That's
Yeah.
that's the scary part. Yeah.
That is the scary part. That's why
Yep.
you have to go back to Sweden to
Yep.
deal with
Yep.
better infrastructure.
Yep. It so far is hold up. Yeah.
Good deal. Good deal. But yeah, no, I mean, so I'm so fascinated about this. I've drawn a few maps, as you said. You know, that's how you kind of get your start. But I've never thought of going this so deep into the software and the mapping side of it. I just want to,
Yeah,
reap
and
the benefits
Yeah,
of
and
it.
also that-
you can learn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's so many other cartographers that are so good at drawing dungeons. So I wanted to draw something different where I could stand out a bit.
Yeah,
So
this
yeah.
is-
So I went big rather than small.
I like it, macro scale. But it's funny because there's not that many fantasy cartographers out there. Like you said, that it's.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a smaller niche, but it's growing.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's growing, and there's probably about, I would say, almost a dozen or so that do it more or less full time now. Yep.
Right. Out of 7 billion people.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah.
It's a growing
It's
niche.
growing.
It used to be like
It used to be
3.
6.
Yeah, it used to be none or so, but then now there's a bunch of us that doing this.
And
Yeah.
I've seen them. I started following all of them on this community the last couple of months because they all. I mean, are you in contact with them? Do you guys like trade stuff?
Yeah,
back
I
and
have
forth?
a couple of them that we exchange ideas on how to do things, techniques, and we exchange resources like textures and stuff we
Oh,
do
that's
and stuff.
cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
We should do like a cartographer summit.
Yeah.
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 I would love to see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then
This
we
could
just.
be Edna's future.
It could be. It could be.
Greg's daughter draws maps.
Ooh.
Didn't she draw a map of her imaginary world?
I was helping her. I was drawing it, and then
Ah.
she was like naming off the places. And
That
doing
was
it.
my work, really.
Yep.
Oh, I thought. Well, I'm
Yeah.
not impressed anymore.
Yeah, it's really what she. I think she likes the idea of traveling
Yeah.
in a space and exploring.
Like her
it.
dad.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
she
Wolfgang,
does it.
how do you give Anna this information? Are you providing this elevation data? Or
no,
I mean,
not at
how
the
are
end.
you?
Nagging
What
her
information
for-
do you give?
Yeah.
Well, it's not nearly as much information as you think, right? Like the further you get away from Zobek and the heart of the Midgard setting, the more nebulous and amorphous the directions become, and it's like it's sort of Madagascar meets Tunisia coastline.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
And I sent him a question saying that what do they do there? Do they grow crops, or is that an evil cult, or
Right.
Yeah, whatever.
And
so, yeah.
so I'm really bad at maps that are graphical in any way. For some reason, my writerly side takes over. I draw a map, and then I start writing all over it. This is my normal turnover. It's
Yep.
like, here's the coasts, and these are rivers.
Yep.
Those should be in blue. And now let's start, like, forest here is way easier for me to write
Right.
than I'm going to...
Drawing each individual tree.
Yeah.
But for me, that's perfect because that's the kind of input I want.
Yeah.
And people think that they need to send me beautiful sketches, but that's what they hire me to do.
Right.
So just give me a big paper with scroll down saying forest here, evil dragon here, whatever, and a lot of boulders over here.
Right, and
so
then
on.
like
Yeah.
later, it's like, well, the mountain range comes back, and I'll say, well, Anna, this is a great mountain range, and it looks all fantastic. But what I forgot to tell you was where the frost giants live, so there need to be a whole lot more glaciers.
Yes.
right.
Yeah. So
Or
we need to
something.
tweak things back and forth.
So
yeah.
then things change, but
Yep.
I don't know. It's sort of a back and forth
Oh, yeah.
constantly,
Yep.
and it gets us. I can't. I'm not going to complain a bit about the results. They're just so fantastic, and some of it is pure art, and some of it is algorithm, right?
Yeah.
Like you generate
Yeah,
some
I
of the
use
river
fractals
curves.
and stuff to
make it feel
exactly
random.
to be real, so to look real. But then so half of my job is more kind of program. You do visual programming and you set in the fractals and setup, and the other half is you paint in Photoshop and you do the fonts and you do heraldry and all the other stuff in here in Illustrator or Photoshop. So half of it is artistic and the other more is kind of programmable technical stuff.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like the idea of like taking like a. I mean, I've done this when trying to come up with names for my campaign. You do those
Yep.
fantasy name generators.
Yep.
And they're not awesome the
Yep.
output, but then you tweak a
Yep.
syllable here or
Yep.
there,
Like, that's
and it
the
ends
same
up being like,
principle.
oh, that's
Yep.
a name that I could get
Yep.
behind, and it
Just
sounds
add
like
an
that's what.
apostrophe.
Yep.
Yes, that's what I do.
And a Z.
Between each letter is an
Yep.
apostrophe. That's
Yep.
it's like it's a dragon in D&D.
Yep.
More
Yep.
consonants.
Yeah.
So that's
More
the same.
consonants.
More
Sounds
consonants is
better.
good.
Yep.
I also love. I don't know if there's that throwaway joke in the pilot of Arrested Development where I forget the name of the character, but he took a class in map making, and he's like, I'm pretty sure the blue is the land.
Yeah.
And I just had to get that in there somewhere because that makes me feel like, oh my God, you just mapped this entire ocean. That's so cool. There's all these trade routes through it and everything.
and it's also my job doing the map is to fill in the blanks that left out in the story. That connects. It's the in between areas that I need to concentrate. The writers and stuff, they write the whole chapter about that little place, and then they write another number of paragraphs on that place over there. But it's my job to kind of fill in what's in between. So
Yeah.
I work actually more on the in between areas than the areas that are written about most of the text. And
You're like the
that's-
perfect writing prompt for Wolfgang, right?
Yeah.
Because you're
Right.
like, hey, what happened in between here? And you're like,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know. And then you just start writing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's like,
so-
oh look, there's a pass.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is the story behind this pass?
Yeah.
And sometimes some of the artifacts that end up on the map actually end up
Oh
in
yeah,
the
those are
story.
great sometimes.
Yeah.
There was some programming artifact on the Southlands
Yeah.
map
That-
that was
monoliths, great peaks on the terrain,
Yeah.
just stuck up 5 miles up in the air. So to
Oh,
speak.
wow.
And normally I would filter them out and being weird artifacts that not supposed to be there.
But I said,
it was
Anna,
kinda
it's
cool.
fantastic. Look,
Yeah.
it's a 5 mile tall peak of
Yep.
Sauron-like evil.
Yep.
Let's keep it.
Yeah. So we kept them.
Yeah.
Yep. So there's a bunch of them here and there. There's a few of them here and there spread out
Right.
over the Southlands and
And
others.
so,
Yep.
and that way, the map kind of drove the setting to like, well, let's tell the story of the peak. Oh,
Yep.
all right.
So it became a soundbar, I think, at the end.
It did.
Yep.
It did.
Oh, cool.
Yep.
I love that stuff.
Yeah.
All right, so where can people find out more about? Let's start with Midgard. Where you mentioned
well,
it a couple times, but
Sure. The Midgard campaign setting is available for sale at your local hobby store. It is available at koboldpress.com.
Handbook.
The Hero's Handbook is the crunchy one. The World Book is the GM's Guide, DM's Guide. Oh my God, you got to flip through that thing.
yeah, I was-
Yep.
A lot of
yeah,
heraldry.
it's just not big enough.
I know. It's merely 450 pages.
That's it.
Yep.
Yeah, I know.
You
With
couldn't
a
squeeze in
big
another signature.
poster map bound in and all that crunchy goodness for
my God, this
void magic and blood magic and
Red portal
doom-
magic.
My
Yeah, red
gosh.
portal. All that's in the back. That's in the World Book because we don't want players to get their filthy little eyes on it. And
You shan't be playing it.
right. So there is there is a crunchy section for the dungeon master in the Midgard World Book, and it's all the villain stuff. And the artifacts and magic items that are not every day. So there's
Such
that.
good
How many
stuff.
writers worked on that book?
Oh my goodness. I wanna guess 8.
There's a map.
Like 2 main writers and 6 I'm exhausted take over kind of writers, right?
Yeah.
We did it by chapters, and then some of the crunch came from various hands, and we even had 2 editors on it.
Yeah.
So.
Only 2 editors?
Yeah, only 2. It
Oh.
almost killed one of them. I know. We dragged her from the battlefield. Michelle, you gotta just a little further. We're
Oh my
almost to
God.
press. Well, projects like this, I mean, it's 6 years since the last time we printed the Midgard World Book, and we added 150 pages this time and a bunch of art and rewrote big chunks of it and advanced the timeline a little, not a ton.
You guys weren't happy with 9 hells, so you went with 11 hells.
We went with 11 because
Oh,
it's
ours
too
goes to
ours goes
11.
to 11.
To 11. was that where that came from?
It was just, yes, it was deliberate.
I love it even
I'll
more.
cop to it.
We just wanted to go up. It's
You
2
know,
more.
it's
Ours
two
go to
more.
11.
It's 2 more. It's that much worse.
It's that
You
much
got
worse.
2
You
more
don't want to go
layers.
to these hells.
Why don't you just make 9 more hellish?
Well, no.
Because
but it's 2 more.
ours go to 11.
Well, it's a fantastic piece of work. It's very.
It's getting a lot of play, and it's getting a bunch of people interested in a setting that was produced for the first time just 6 years ago. It's a brand new campaign setting for D&D. How often does that happen?
Yeah.
How much did the maps change in the 6 years?
Well, we had a completely different cartographer on the
Yeah.
first edition, so I would say they've changed a lot.
But did you
But
change? Did you say like
in
you
terms
know
of the
what?
borders,
There's a new
or
area,
new
never-
land.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We expanded
Yes.
it vastly from the first time.
In the north, in particular, like the Kingdom of the Ogres wasn't really on the map the first time around. The Thursreich is it wasn't there. A bunch of the stuff off to the east, the Red Wastes and other really nasty, horrible void and blood magic kingdoms, places where players should never go unless the game master forces them to. Those got added. And all the stuff that happened in the adventures we published over the last 6 years, some of it is hinted at, we're not sure whether you ran this or not, so we're not going to give it all away. But other stuff just got embodied wholesale. It's okay, this is canon now. We're moving forward
Yeah.
with that.
Very cool.
Yeah, no, I mean, a lot changes in 6 years.
So
Yeah.
interesting.
And I was fascinated to find out that the last new campaign setting that Wizards published was more than 6 years ago. You gotta
That's true.
do
Right?
a new one, a fresh whole cloth campaign setting.
Gosh, that's such a big undertaking.
Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah.
I encourage you. I think you have a secret plot somewhere
Yeah.
just down the hall here. They're busy cooking up the new thing.
Yeah.
We got lots of secrets. We got lots of plots.
I
Lots
know.
of cooks in the kitchen.
I know.
Making things happen.
Yep.
So you're going to have to watch me on my way out of the building because I'm going to be snooping.
Yeah.
Yep.
We're watching those pull your pockets out. All those bags of stuff that you guys brought
You're gonna
in
have to
might
go
be
to the
filled
mind
with other
eraser
stuff.
on
That's
your way
right.
out.
Yep.
You can sleep
Spy
all you want.
camera.
Anna, it was super fascinating to learn more about the maps and things like that. You mentioned the Patreon. Where can people find out more about what you do and maybe take that class?
Yeah, they can go to my Patreon at patreon.com/Anna B. Meyer, or they can go to my website, ghmaps.net.
Super cool.
GH Maps.
Greg's
That's
gonna
very
take
smart.
that
I'm going
No
to take that
trademark
class
infringement.
and/or petition to join your next campaign, so that
Great.
we can
Yeah.
make a simulationist take on the world and blow it all up. And then maybe combine this with Matthew Coville's work on
Yes.
strongholds
I was to say
and
that
putting that all
very
together.
interesting.
very smart.
Very interesting.
I
Yep.
like it.
Mhm.
I like it a lot. Well,
Yep.
thanks so much for coming down, you
you.
guys. It was
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you.
Sweet.
Fascinating as usual.
As
We
always.
didn't even get to talk about squirrels.
No, we
There's a
did.
squirrel.
Fat raccoons. We did talk about squirrels earlier. We said
I was being
Ryan
squirrely.
calls you squirrely.
That counts. That counts as our wildlife conversation.
Yep.
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. We're going to take a quick break here now and get set up for our next interview with Dr. Megan Connell to find out all about other ways that we can make our brains not hurt.
D&D therapy.
Using D&D, exactly. She's got a lot
Power.
to tell us about there.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot. We'll be back in a couple minutes.
Thanks.